For the next hour, you'll be leaving the Show Me state and entering the Show Me the Money state. So stop what you're doing, grab a pen, and get ready to learn. Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group will be your guide for straight talk and honest answers about living the life you deserve in retirement. So prepare to be empowered. Now, here are your Show Me the Money hosts, Jake Floyd and Jeff Shade.
Thank you so much. Welcome to Show Me the Money, the radio show that gives you the straight talk and honest answers you need to help you reach your wealth management and retirement goals through smart investing and careful planning. On today's show, we're going to be talking about current events. We'll also talk about how to plan for retirement, the go-go, slow-go, and no-go years, and finally, your retirement reckoning, 4 questions to ask before you retire. My name's Jeff Shade, and of course, I'm just here to ask the questions with the words of wisdom and solid advice. Of course, they come from Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group. Hey, Jake, how you doing today?
Jeff, I'm just back fresh from vacation, and I'm feeling great.
Well, I'm glad to have you back. Where'd you go on vacation? What'd you guys do?
So I took my first ever trip to California. And I know what you guys are thinking. He's gone to the left coast on us. And I just barely got into California. Okay, we went to Yosemite and went to see the sequoias and all that. That was a really cool trip. It was just a relatively short trip, but we just wanted to take one more little jaunt out there before Trevor starts school back up. But it's beautiful. It's just another area of our country that I hadn't seen, and there's so many places in this country to see that have their own beauty, and we have so many different climates and so many different sections of our nation that have very vastly different things to look at, different types of beauty. You know, I think it's beautiful here. When people come here from California, like, oh man, look at all the trees, look how beautiful it is in the fall and all that. We take it a little bit for granted here sometimes, but everywhere you go in this country is beautiful.
Yeah, and you know, the great thing about the United States, and particularly too about California, you know, if you take away Los Angeles, San Francisco, San Diego, you get out in some of the more rural areas like you were, get out east. It really is beautiful. The geography is just unmatched, but unfortunately, Los Angeles and San Francisco and San Diego, those are the places that most people hear about, and that's where most of the problem is. But you're right. People come to this country. We have such a variety of landscapes and things to see that we don't need to go to other places. I'm happy right here.
Well, and I kind of knew it would be this way, but there's a ton of farming area. So we landed in Fresno and then drove up to the mountains, and there's a lot of orange farms and all kinds of fruit and that kind of thing. But a lot of that country is pretty conservative.
Oh, yeah.
From a political ideology standpoint. When you get up in the mountains, it starts to get a little more interesting. But
to put it lightly, especially Humboldt County.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, it was a good trip. There's nothing really I could complain about. It was a little hotter than I was expecting it to be. I know California is having some fairly record high temperatures in some areas over there. And when we landed back in Dallas, we had to lay over in Dallas. It was like 107 or something on the tarmac while we were pulling in. But I knew summer was coming eventually. It's arrived, I think.
Well, Jake, we're certainly glad to have you back with us here on the show, and it is hard to believe that we're already at the beginning of August, and while summer is officially about 6 weeks left, the financial calendar is starting to shift towards the second half of the year. We've had another busy stretch in the markets. Inflation continues to make headlines. When you step back, Jake, and look at the bigger picture, what is your takeaway from the past couple of weeks?
Yeah, so we've been going through the first part of earnings season. Markets are kind of going sideways over the last few weeks here. I think there's some people starting to get impatient with it. I would just say that as we zoom out the chart a little bit, we know that we're still way up, even though there's been a little bit of tumultuousness here over the last few weeks. This last week, we had some additional compounding of that. We had Korea's stock market is just absolutely melting down. And a lot of people are like, oh, what's going on over there? Well, it's down like 40% over the last 2 months or so. But we have to also zoom out the chart and look over there and see that in the last 6 months, it's also up like 80%. So it's simply giving back some of the gains, some of the frivolous gains that it had. Korea's market is also very, very tied to tech, chips, memory, things like that. And all those things had been running pretty good. So honestly, to me, it's starting to look like time to buy here again. And any of my current clients that are listening, and then also for those who are not current clients, you know, I've been sitting on a little bit of cash for a while, kind of waiting for a good buying opportunity, just because it was hard to see things to buy that we want to own, that we didn't already own, that we want to own more of. everything from the NVIDIAs of the world to Google to SpaceX to even things like Walmart, are down from their highs. So overall, I think we're in a pretty good spot. There's quite a bit of negativity out there, which, again, if you're a longtime listener of the show, you know that I like to see the negativity, because negativity is potential energy, as your 8th grade science teacher would have taught you, meaning it's potential for the market to go higher. If you can convert people who are negative to being positive, then they can put their money in, which will drive things higher. If everybody in unison is shouting that it's going to keep going up and it's never going to come down again, that's when we want to be worried. And so there's a healthy amount of negativity out there. I'm not saying it can't go lower than it is right now, and frankly, it's not very low. We're a few percent off the all-time high. But at the same time, I think that the market is in a healthier spot today than it was, let's say, 2 months ago.
Jake, you said that this might be the time to buy. What are some of the buying signals that you're seeing?
So there's been a washout in certain sectors, from software a few months ago to the chip sector, the AI build-out sector, and now the memory sector. So a lot of people may or may not have been following this, but there's been a pretty big memory shortage. When I say memory, I'm talking about RAM, DRAM. So these are things that your computer uses to complete tasks, especially it uses large amounts if it's completing more than one task at a time, and so it's driven the price of computers up. RAM used to be a very cheap component for your computer. You could get a lot of RAM 10 years ago for $100, and you could go crazy for $200, and now RAM has just gone through the roof on cost, so much so that it's almost prohibitive to buy a computer right now. And so the companies that manufacture that RAM and memory have been just going to the moon. I haven't looked at the recent number, but Micron at one point, Micron's probably the biggest manufacturer of RAM out there, and I think their stock was up like 1,800% over the last year or something. And there's another one called SanDisk. They're a competitor, a much smaller competitor, but they were up like 3,000% over 18 months or something. So those companies are now way back down. I think SanDisk is down over 50%, and Micron's not quite that bad. It's more like 30%, I think. But seeing those things, to answer your question, Jeff, seeing those things come back to reality is something we want to see. And we want to see some of those bigger washout moments where these stocks, these high flyers, are having 10 and 20% down days. While most people would look at that and think, hey, that's scary and we want to get out of there, that's actually a signal that we may be nearing a bottom on those stocks. And if those high-flying stocks are nearing a bottom, they're usually the first to bottom. And so that means the rest of the market is probably gearing up for another leg higher. Whether that's in the next month or 3 months or 6 months is harder to say, but we've had a sideways period here following the run that we had from April to June. We had a big run, and so having a little consolidation, getting ready for the next leg higher.
Talk with Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group, and of course, we are talking about current events in our program today. Anything piques your interest, you'd like to come in and sit down and have a casual conversation with Jake. Of course, there is no cost and there is no obligation. The phone number, 417-889-7233 to set that up. All you've got to do is call that number, leave your name and number. Ashley will call you back and set that conversation up for you. And again, no cost, no obligation, and no judgment. Will meet you where you are. Jake, let's talk about SpaceX. That was all the big buzz here. I'm going to say about a month or so ago. It is down even more. Is this the time to buy SpaceX?
I think we're getting pretty close. And again, for those who have listened over the last few weeks, I've been saying to pretty much anybody who will listen that we want to be involved in SpaceX, but we don't want to go too whole hog right away, because SpaceX IPO'd technically at 135, but the actual trading opened in the 160s, and then it proceeded to go to 225. And I had people calling me all over the place. You gotta buy me more. You gotta buy me more. I'm like, hey, let's not buy more right here. And so now we were under 110 last week. So I do think we're getting pretty close. We might not have seen the full washout just yet. I do think that stock will probably go under 100 before it's over, but I do think we're getting close. They scheduled their earnings call for, I think it's the 4th of August, that first week of August there. So that's next week. I think that we're going to see that they have been making a lot of deals with a lot of these AI companies for them to use their chips. And that's huge amounts of revenue with very high profit margins, because they're just basically renting the chips and paying huge amounts. I think Anthropic's paying $1 billion a month or something like that to use the chips. So I think we're going to see good numbers. I think we're going to see hopefully some progress on whether or not they're going to be able to feasibly do these data centers in space. So they're calling this Operation Starmind, but basically this is where they're going to launch these data centers that nobody wants to have in their backyard for water consumption and power reasons. They're going to put those in space, and so I think we'll maybe have some more details on that as they just named that project and everything. So I think we're going to see more down that road, probably some more on Starlink, which is their satellite internet provider. There's also a lot of short selling going on, specifically with SpaceX, where a lot of these big hedge funds, and again, this is another thing that I talk to a lot of clients about, is like, man, they hate Elon. The hedge funds hate Elon Musk. And so them shorting his stock hurts SpaceX to some extent. And so they've already got like 32% of the float short, which is a very high number, but that is more potential energy. So if they put out some kind of good news, those short sellers will be forced to cover, meaning they'll be forced to buy the stock that they sold short, which will create more upwards momentum, upwards pressure. So I think with SpaceX specifically, but all stocks, but I think even more so with SpaceX, we need to be focused on the 5-year, 10-year outlook, not so much what's going to happen tomorrow. The only thing we want to be worried about in the short term is how cheap can we buy it. We want to buy it at as good a price as we can. But I really think SpaceX is a $700, $800, maybe even $1,000 stock 10 years from now. So we want to make sure that we don't get too focused on the day-to-day stock gyrations.
Well, when SpaceX first launched in its initial public offering, there was a lot of excitement about that. And of course, the prices were higher than we thought that they should be, and they have come down. How long does it take before a company like SpaceX proves that it does have legs, that it's going to last?
So I don't think there's any question in anybody rational's mind that it's going to last, because just Starlink and the data center stuff, not the space data center stuff, but just the other things they have going on, is something like 30 billion plus in revenue at very high profit margins. So just that business alone is worth, in today's world, in that realm, in that arena, it's probably worth half of what it's trading at right now, just that alone, with no future looking, with no space exploration, no rockets, all that. And so I think there's plenty of company there. The question is how quickly can they expand to these other endeavors that they're wanting to do? And Elon's timeline is always much more optimistic than reality. But that's the kind of person you have to be if you're going to do impossible things. You have to be very optimistic. So I really think that the time to buy this stock is probably going to be 2 to 3 weeks after its earnings call. I do think the earnings call is going to be good, but I think that after the earnings call, they have a lockup period expiration. So a lot of employees will be able to sell their stocks, and a lot of early investors will be able to sell their stock pretty immediately after the earnings call is over. And so that's going to create a lot of selling pressure. The question is that going to be enough selling pressure to offset the buying pressure? That remains to be seen, but I think a prudent investor is going to wait for the earnings call, not get too excited. Let's see how much selling happens, and then probably start to do some more buying. Again, I think dollar cost averaging the stock is probably a very good idea, meaning we don't want to just go in and buy 100% of what we want to buy on one day. We want to buy a little bit and then wait a little bit of time, buy some more, wait a little bit, buy some more. That way you're not a victim of buying at a peak when you're trying to gamble buying the bottom.
Talking with Jake Floyd, Floyd Financial Group. We're talking about current events, and we're going to continue this conversation in just a moment. Talk about some of the other things that are going on around the world and how it affects us right here at home. But in the meantime, if you're within 5 to, I'd say, 10 years of retirement, or you're already retired, this is an ideal time to make sure that your strategy is still on track. With the last 6 weeks of summer ahead, there's still plenty of time to make meaningful adjustments before the end of the year. So don't wait until the holidays are approaching or until another market swing has you wondering what to do. Take advantage of our complimentary retirement planning consultation with Jake Floyd here at Floyd Financial Group. They'll review your current investments, your income strategy, your taxes, and risks that could impact your retirement and help you determine whether your plan is truly built for the years ahead. So call us here at Floyd Financial Group and get your Floyd Financial Group retirement review, no cost, no obligation. 417-889-7233. It's 417-889-7233. And as always, you can find out more about us online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Time for a break, Jake. We'll be right back with more of Show Me the Money right after this.
Ready for another helping of some more real money talk? Thought so. Now, here's another serving of Show Me the Money with your hosts, Jake Floyd and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back to Show Me the Money. I'm Jake Floyd. In this segment, we're going to be talking some more about current events, including the SAVE Act.
All right, Jake, let's talk about that SAVE Act, by the way. First of all, for people who do not know what the SAVE Act is, can you lay it out for us a little bit?
Yeah, the SAVE Act, or as President Trump likes to call it, the Save America Act, that's a valid ID before registering to vote, proof of citizenship, and no mail-in voting, no mail-in ballots, except for illness, disability, military, or travel. So the current exemptions, not just willy-nilly because you feel like doing a mail-in ballot. And these things all have to be taken care of ahead of time. So honestly, I don't see how any rational human being can have a problem with that.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Jake. I mean, why would you have a problem with proving that you're eligible to vote in this country?
I can think of one reason. If you're a cheater.
Yeah, okay.
And again, I don't know how much our listeners have been following all this. I'd say probably quite a bit. If you're listening to this show, you're probably in tune with what's going on here. But not to state the obvious, but just to make sure everybody's on the same page. This is largely seen as a pro-Republican situation, right? Because a lot of the undocumented immigrants, illegal immigrants that are voting, and a lot of the fraud that's happening in certain states are in more liberal states that have more liberal mail-in voting requirements and things like that, where we've seen videos of people opening their mailbox and having 3 or 4 ballots in there, one for their deceased parent, all kinds of there's some even quite a bit more blatant fraud out there, but it's a little harder to prove on an internet video. But there's definitely dead people voting. There's definitely a lot of fraud out there. And I think the only reason you would not want proof of citizenship and proof of ID and no mail-in voting is if you want to cheat. It's starting to make me question even some of these Republicans that are putting themselves in harm's way to block this act from getting voted on. Again, I can only think of one reason why you wouldn't want this voted on in a timely manner.
So, Jake, I think that it is only common sense that we should prove our citizenship to vote in this country. How do other countries handle things like this?
Yeah, I mean, even countries that are arguably third world countries have voter identification. There's only a handful of countries out there that don't require a valid photo ID and proof of citizenship to vote. And even countries, India and Brazil, have a biometric database so that, I mean, it's way more stringent than what we're talking about here. Germany, Canada, they require paper ballots, so there's no electronic voting there. Even countries like Denmark, they don't allow mail-in voting unless you would otherwise be eligible to vote in a normal election type. So I think just the notion that people are openly for illegal immigrants voting in this country is mind-melting to me. I mean, do we really want the rest of the world voting in our elections?
I wouldn't think so, no.
Most of the world would love to see us falter so they can take our place. They do not have our best interest at heart for the most part, including our quote-unquote allies. I do think we have a few good allies in the world, but a lot of NATO openly mocks us and does not like us, and so I don't think we can trust them. But I just can't understand how it's become acceptable to say that having voter ID is somehow racist. And if you have to have an ID to pick up a prescription, or you have to have an ID to drive a car, I mean, those things, in my opinion, are way less important than voting in this country. Voting should be one of the most sacred things that we have in this country. And it's ultimately what over 1 million Americans have fought and bled and died for, boils down to the ability to vote. And if we don't take that seriously, we're not going to have any more fair elections. And I think arguably you could say that the elections haven't been fair for a while if this is a major practice that's happening, and it appears that it is. So I don't see how it's controversial, except to say that if there's really that much fraud going on and all the elections are already close, Maybe the Democrats are just worried they're never going to win another election if this passes.
Jake, I'm looking at a website right now as you speak, and I guess I should name the website. There's been no problem with that. It's called Vote Riders, and it says that the SAVE Act is dangerous for democracy because it's saying that every American doesn't have proof of citizenship. They maybe do not have a birth certificate. What is your feeling on that?
Well, maybe they shouldn't be in this country.
Okay.
If you're not a citizen and you're here illegally, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that I think you should be deported immediately. If you are here illegally and you do not have appropriate documentation, you are not a citizen, you do not have naturalization paperwork, then yeah, you shouldn't be here. If you do have those things, then you should have everything you need to get voter registration. It's pretty simple. If you were born in this country, you have a birth certificate. If you've lost your birth certificate, you can apply to have another one. It's not that difficult. You go through way more stringent requirements every year to update the tags on your car. I mean, this is insanity.
Well, what it's saying here is that 1 in 10 Americans do not have a passport, and many do not have access to a copy of their birth certificate. My mother was born in the hills and hollows of Tennessee many years ago, and back then there were a lot of home births. There wasn't a birth certificate, but after a few years went by, she was able to get one. So yeah. I think I'm with you, is that if you do not have a birth certificate, you can get one. But are there other documents that are needed beyond a birth certificate? I would think that that's probably about the only thing that you would need.
Well, ultimately, it's getting a valid photo ID. So everything that you need at the DMV when you go to get your driver's license renewed is what you need. So you need, like for tags on your vehicles and everything, you got to have your personal property tax stuff cleared. But otherwise, you need a social security card or a birth certificate and proof that you live where you say you live. If they don't have proof of that, sometimes they'll ask for like a utility bill or something like that. I mean, if you're not paying utilities and you're not paying your taxes, maybe you shouldn't vote anyway.
Well, I would think so, yeah.
I realize that I'm probably getting myself in some hot water here, but I'm kind of done beating around the bush here. If you are not contributing to society in any way, I mean, how are people getting to work and stuff if they don't drive? Now, in inner cities, I realize that there's a lot of people that don't have cars. But I think there's also a lot of people that just simply don't register their vehicle and don't get a driver's license.
Oh, yeah.
Turn on an episode of Cops and you'll see about 50 people get pulled over with no license, no registration.
Oh, yeah.
And they basically get a little slap on the wrists and say, don't do it again, and they get a ticket. Maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe we should actually require a license to drive.
You know, those YouTube channels are quite popular. I see, Traffic Thursdays or something that's in Coral Springs, Florida, then Fridays with Frank that is in Arizona. And you're right, I'm so surprised at the number of people who get pulled over. They don't have a driver's license. They don't have registration. They have no proof of insurance. The car is not even registered, but yet they're out going to 68 miles an hour in a 45-mile-an-hour zone. I mean, what are these people thinking?
We clearly don't have stringent enough laws in this country, or at least the enforcement of those laws has become more lax, because if I didn't have my car registered and I was driving illegally and frankly, if I wasn't a citizen of the country and I didn't have my driver's license, I would not be out there doing 30 over the speed limit.
No.
I can tell you that. But maybe I'm just a bad criminal. I don't know, because I just try to follow the law and do the things that are required of me. But maybe that's old-fashioned.
Yeah, well, in the comments on these things, too, people are saying, if you are an illegal immigrant and, you don't have these things, why would you be going 30 miles an hour over the speed limit? Now, I have all those things, but still, I'm within 5 to 10 miles an hour of the speed limit, so maybe I'm just weird. Talking with Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group. We're talking about current events here. And, of course, we've been talking about the SAVE Act. If our conversation piques your interest, we've been having a little fun here. You'd like to get in and sit down and talk with Jake about your individual situation, your journey towards a confident retirement. We are offering the Floyd Financial Group Financial Review at no cost and no obligation. The number to call to get yours, 417-889-7233. It's 417-889-7233. You can call this weekend, leave your name and telephone number with Ashley. She will call you back and set up that appointment for you to come in and sit down with Jake. Jake would love to talk to you about the SAVE Act if you'd like to talk about that or anything else that's on your mind. Again, no cost, no obligation, 417-889-7233. Jake, let's continue our conversation here about current events on the minds of a lot of people here in Missouri. Is Missouri Amendment 5? For those people who do not know what that is, explain it to us.
Yeah, so this is something I've been getting a lot of questions about, so I figured I would bring it up here on the show. And Missouri Amendment 5 is proposing to reduce and eventually eliminate the income tax for the state of Missouri and implement sales tax changes to kind of compensate for that. And so as revenue is increased from the sales tax, the income tax for the state of Missouri would get reduced. So I think the question that is on everybody's mind is, should I vote for this? Should I not vote for this? Who does this benefit? And so I thought I would talk a little bit about that. So I think that, in my opinion, this is kind of a regressive tax. So what we have for most of the country is a progressive tax system, meaning people that make less money pay less taxes, people that make more money pay more taxes. A regressive tax would be the opposite of that. And so I think this will benefit the most high-income earners, people with large 401ks in retirement, because they will have the ability to save money and not pay those taxes. Versus on an income tax, when that money comes in, they're going to pay taxes no matter what. So I think it hurts people that make less money, and it helps people that have retirement assets and people that are more wealthy or make more money per year. Again, this is my opinion. That's how I look at it. That's how I think it will be implemented. So I would say that if you are retirement age and you're making $50,000 to $100,000 a year, it's probably kind of a wash. If you're making more than that, it will probably help you if it passes. And if you're making less than that, it will probably hurt you to some extent if it passes, because you're already probably not paying a lot of state tax as it is.
Jake, there are 9 U.S. states with no traditional wage or broad individual income tax. They include Alaska, Florida, Nevada, New Hampshire, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas, Washington, and Wyoming. I have lived in 2 of those states, Washington and Tennessee. And it seems on the surface that this is a great thing. We're going to save a lot of money, but believe me, they get it in some other ways in terms of things like how much it costs you to register your car or the sales tax. So what's your opinion on this state tax?
That's exactly right, what you said. There is no getting away from the taxes. It's not going to create less tax revenue or really more tax revenue. It's just going to come from a different source. And so the question is, do you want people that earn less to pay more, and people that earn more to pay less, or not? Jeff, I'm a little bit on the fence simply because it would obviously help me quite a lot from a tax perspective if it passes. But I also know that it will hurt people who already don't make a lot of money. It's going to hurt people that are on fixed income. It'll hurt them because they'll simply just be paying it at the grocery store, where they may not be paying income tax now, people that are living on $1,500 a month Social Security or whatever. I don't know that I want to come out here and just put out a really big opinion on it, but I would just say everybody just needs to ask themselves how it's going to benefit them. Is it going to benefit them? Who's it going to hurt? And make those choices accordingly. But to your point a second ago, I think I have a lot of family that lives in Texas, right? So Texas does not have a state income tax. What they do have is ridiculous property taxes.
Oh, yeah.
I have an aunt that lives down there. And this has been probably 10 or 12 years ago, but I know she had a house, and her house was worth at the time around $600,000. And I want to say her property tax was something close to $20,000 a year.
Yeah.
Which we would consider here highway robbery. Mm-hmm. And so it's not that the taxes are going away. And I think there's some people that look at it that way, and that's not the way to look at it. It's really shifting who and how the taxes get paid, and how much autonomy you have over how much tax you're paying. And so I do think it's generally good for a lot of retirees, but it definitely is going to hurt lower income workers and people on fixed income that don't have a lot of assets and they're just stuck on Social Security or something. So it's hard to weigh all that out, in my opinion. Some people are like, how is that hard? To me, it's kind of hard because there's a big group of people that'll benefit and a big group of people that it won't benefit. But it's really more of a change, in my opinion, more than a plus or a minus.
And finally, I want to talk about something that is of interest to me, and that is the abolishment of the time change. Jake, we may be stuck on daylight savings time indefinitely. What do you think about that?
I can't wait.
Me neither.
I hope that happens. And again, some people are probably very opposed to that idea. I think it's just an unnecessary hassle.
Oh, yeah.
And it makes 2 weeks of my life miserable whenever I'm trying to adjust my biological clock to those new times. I also don't like in the winter how it gets dark at 4:30.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to make it light earlier in the day. I mean, it'll be a little strange going to work in December and it's barely light at 9 o'clock. But I would personally rather have that and then have a little bit of sunlight left when I get home as opposed to what we have now. So I think that's a win in my opinion.
Well, I hope that this happens and it happens soon because I'm on board with you. If you talk to people in other parts of the country, the time zones really can mess you up. I don't understand why we ever changed it. I know there were some reasons for that, but I'm all with you and let's hope that it passes. If today's conversation has raised some questions about your own retirement plan, now's the perfect time to find out how prepared you really are. Floyd Financial Group, Jake and his team here can help you stress test your retirement plan for market downturns, inflation, taxes, healthcare costs, and more. So call us here at Floyd Financial Group today at 417-889-7233 and schedule your complimentary retirement review. It's 417-889-7233. No cost, no obligation, and no judgment. We'll meet you where you are. We're also online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Take time for a break. When we come back, we'll be talking about how to plan for retirement's go-go, slow-go, and no-go years when our program continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
We're back with your financial catch of the day, and it's a big one. Here's more Show Me the Money Radio with your hosts, Jake Floyd and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back to Show Me the Money. I'm Jake Floyd. In this segment, we're going to be talking about how to plan for retirement's go-go, slow-go, and no-go years.
And Jake, when most people think about retirement planning, they think about investment, Social Security, taxes, and maybe Medicare. But today we're talking about something that people rarely plan for, the fact that retirement itself changes over time, right?
Absolutely. And I think some people think of retirement as a big, long vacation. But it evolves as we go through it, meaning right away when you retire, health-wise, you're probably going to be in the best shape right after retirement. And as time moves forward, you won't be able to do as much 15 years into retirement as you did the day you retired. And 25 years into retirement, you're definitely not going to be able to. So thinking about how your money is going to last and how you're going to use your nest egg in retirement really fits into those three categories.
And Jake, you divide retirement into three stages, as we said, the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. And, you know, when you first retire, that's when you're healthy, that you can do some things, or we hope that you're healthy. Those are the go-go years. So I want to start with those. Tell me a little bit about the go-go years, some of the things that a lot of people do during the go-go years that they won't be able to do, and how long the go-go years usually last.
Yeah, so the go-go years are typically 10 to 15 years into retirement. You're healthy, energetic, finally have time to do everything that you couldn't do while you were working. And I know there's some people right now laughing in the background because they're retired and they're like, what are you talking about? I have less time now than I did when I was working. I hear that all the time where people are like, I don't know how I ever had time to work with all the things I've got going now that I'm in retirement. But these are the big years for travel, visiting family, golfing, hiking, cruises, bucket list adventures, whatever you have always wanted to do, but simply couldn't get the time off work to do it. These are the go-go years.
And Jake, traveling around the country during the go-go years or doing some of these things can be expensive. I think more expensive probably than the slow-go years and the no-go years. So when you do a retirement distribution plan, so do you sort of front-load it and allow people to have more money to spend during the go-go years?
Sometimes. It kind of depends on what's important to people. And this is why every plan needs to be individualized. We don't have a one-size-fits-all kind of setup. The reason for that is there's some people that what they want to do is just relax, or the things that they like to do produce income. I have people that start a farm whenever they retire. I have people that enjoy woodworking and things like that. And so they buy a couple of machines and they go out in the shop and they start woodworking and they sell their stuff on Etsy or locally or whatever, and it actually makes them money. But I also have people that like to travel the world, and that costs a lot of money, right? So we need to understand what's important to you. But yes, front-loading income can be an option. It's not something that I recommend for everybody unless I have somebody that's really understands the consequences of those actions, meaning if we say, hey, we're going to take half the money and spend it in the first 10 years because that's when we're going to be the most healthy. Well, that's great, but that also means you're going to have to cut way back 10 years from now. And a lot of people, it's easy to say that now, and then we get to 10 years and like, wait, well, now we have to cut back. So rarely do I do that, but I have done that, and that is an option if somebody's wanting to do that.
So, Jake, retirement spending isn't necessarily supposed to be level every year, as you said. It just depends upon what you want to do. I think that when you first retire, every day is Saturday, and statistics have shown that people spend the most money on Saturday. So those are the go-go years. Let's talk about the slow-go years. Eventually, we all slow down just a little bit. What changes during the slow-go years? What's that like?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just, your overall health over time. I have people that are 90 that get around really well, and I have people that are 60 that don't get around so well. And so it's not just an age thing, but certainly if you're over the age of 25, it's all downhill from there, right? Just physiologically, as you get older, you slow down. As we get to those slower go years, we take a few less trips. Maybe you've already taken all the trips that you wanted to take. If you're like me, traveling the world is not really interesting to me. There's a lot of people that find it very interesting, and that's great. But personally, there's a handful of places I might like to see if it was convenient and didn't require thousands of dollars and 10 hours each way on a plane. So I may never see those places, and I'm okay with that. But some people live to travel, so it's a little bit different for each person. But you may get out there, take a few big trips, and you're like, you know what, I'm done traveling. I just want to hang out and I want to spend time with grandkids and things like that. So things slow down and you spend a little less money. You do a little bit less, you eat out a little less, take less trips. You probably don't need a big brand new Ford F-350 pickup if you're not farming anymore and things like that. Just things start to slow down a little bit.
And of course, travel expenses do slow down, as you said, during the no-go years. But on the other hand, healthcare expenses begin increasing a bit, don't they?
They definitely can. Again, this is why it's important to evaluate each person separately or each couple separately. But I think that, yes, generally speaking, you're going to start spending a little bit more on healthcare, but you're also probably on Medicare at this point. And if you're on Medicare and a supplement, there's a lot of people that pay less for healthcare then than they did when they were working. So when we get to the no-go years, that's when the healthcare costs really start to go up. But if you're in your late 70s, early 80s in the slow-go years, maybe you're going walking instead of playing pickleball, right? Or maybe you're still playing pickleball at 80. I don't know. But you do a little bit less adventurous stuff, but you're still getting around, still able to do some of the things you want to do.
And Jake, retirement planning isn't only math, it's also emotional planning too. During the slow-go years, often people begin to lose spouses and lifelong friends. Have you run into that with people in this stage of retirement?
Yeah, understanding how all those things will impact you is hard for the average person. Rather than trying to worry about all that up front, I try to let you live your life, and I can help with those things as they come up. But yes, retirement planning is not only math. There's more to it than that. I do everything from couples counseling to you can, I promise you won't probably bring up anything that I haven't talked about before. And again, I'm not a counselor, but we do end up talking about all kinds of things that are not financially related. And I'm here for those things too in any way that I can help.
And Jake, I have another friend who's a financial planner, and once he was asked, how much of your day do you spend financially planning with clients? And he said probably about 30%. The other 70% was psychological. Are you finding that in your meetings with people, when it comes to money, it's a very emotional thing, but you end up sort of being a counselor? That's got to be a tough position to be in, isn't it?
It's not as tough as you might think. Because I've been doing this now, I guess coming up on 21 years, it's a little bit second nature. The one thing that's a little bit weird about it is I'm 41, getting ready to turn 42, is giving people life advice that are 20 or 30 years my senior is a little weird sometimes. And I don't just go around handing out advice only when people ask me for it. But when it comes to finances and things, I've helped over 1,000 people retire at this point. So hopefully if we do it right, you're only going to retire once. So simply having that repetition experience helps me know what pitfalls and potholes to look out for.
Talking with Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group, we're talking about the three phases of retirement. They're the go-go years, the slow-go years, and the no-go years. Our phone number, 417-889-7233, if you'd like to talk to Jake on a one-on-one basis about your individual situation. So, Jake, let's talk about the final phase. Those are the no-go years. This is where planning really becomes especially important.
Right. And one of the things, though, that I want to say on the front end of this is a lot of people get really focused on the no-go years. And there's no guarantee that we make it to the no-go years as people. And I don't want to be too blunt here, but at the same time, nobody's guaranteed tomorrow. And as a financial planner, one of my main jobs is to make sure that you don't run out of money. And I'm going to do that job. But at the same time, life is short and you should do some of the things that you want to do in your go-go and slow-go years before you get to the no-go years, and not be sacrificing all your good years trying to provide for the no-go years. So as we get to those years, obviously healthcare costs in the form of nursing home, assisted living facilities, independent living, and just a lot of things that you haven't had to really deal with before start to come in with age. Those costs can be very substantial, and it's things we want to think about, but we don't necessarily want to only focus on when we're 60, what's going to happen to us when we're 90 either.
Jake, I've mentioned before that I have an aunt who's 108 years old as we speak. She is in the hospital right now, and we're really facing the situation where she may need long-term care. She may need to go to some place where there's somebody available 24/7 to take care of her. Long-term care is one of those expenses that people hope never happens, but unfortunately it happens to a lot of people, and long-term care is not inexpensive. So how do you plan for something like that?
Well, I think we need to get some tips on how to live to 108, first of all.
Yeah.
That's insane. And I know this in the back of my mind, but I still can't believe it every time you say it. As far as long-term care goes and getting help with things around the house and that kind of thing, in her case, she may need more supervision. But for a lot of people, it starts with just needing a little bit of help, making sure you get your medication, throw a load of laundry in, cook you a meal, that kind of thing. We don't have to go straight from home to the nursing home, as long as we have a plan on how to pay for some of this stuff. There's insurance, there's annuity care and things like that. But sometimes depends on your situation, depends on how much you have saved, how much you're spending, difference in age between spouses. There's a lot of things that come into play, but a lot of times supplementing care at home is very possible. Then going to some kind of independent living, then some kind of assisted living, and finally a nursing home when we absolutely have to. So life is about choices, and we want to try to maximize those choices with our planning.
Talking with Jake Floyd of Floyd Financial Group, we've been talking about the 3 phases of retirement. Those are the go-go years, the slow-go years, and then finally the no-go years. If today's conversation made you realize that your retirement plan may only be focused on your investments and not on the different stages of retirement, it may be time for a second opinion. Jake here and the team at Floyd Financial Group will help you build a written retirement plan that prepares you for those 3 stages of retirement so you can enjoy your retirement with confidence instead of uncertainty. So call us here at Floyd Financial Group at 417-889-7233 and schedule your complimentary retirement planning visit. It's 417-889-7233. You can also find out more about us online at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Jake, time for a break. When we come back here on Show Me the Money, we're going to be talking about your retirement reckoning, 4 questions to ask before you retire. When our program continues here on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
People of the Ozarks, step away from the fishing pole and prepare to be shown the money, because we're back with more straight talk and honest answers with Jake Floyd and Jeff Shea.
Welcome back to Show Me the Money. I'm Jake Floyd, and in this segment, we're going to be talking about your retirement reckoning. 4 questions to ask before you retire.
And Jake, for decades, people spent their careers asking one question: when can I retire? But once retirement finally arrives, many discovered that they were asking the wrong question. Well, today we're talking about what may be the 4 most important questions anyone approaching retirement should answer.
That's exactly right, Jeff. And most retirement planning focuses on the money, everything financial. And while that's important, that's not where your planning should start. I think the first question out there is, what are you going to do in retirement? We talk about on the show, and one of our taglines is retire to something, not from something. What are you going to do once you are no longer working? And for some people, they have a hard time answering that question. That's why they're 75 and still working.
Right.
But some people retire and they don't know what they're going to do, and they retire anyway. And that can be a tough period for some people if they don't already have a plan on what they're going to do, what they're going to spend their time on. For a lot of people, those things are already kind of laid out, but for a lot of people, they haven't ever thought about it. They've worked for 40 years and that's who they are. So understanding that retirement doesn't necessarily mean never working again. It might, but it might not. It means, how are you going to choose to spend your time?
So the first question is, what will you be doing in your retirement? Because work provides much more than just a paycheck. It gives a structure, relationships, a reason to get out of bed, a sense of accomplishment. When that suddenly disappears, a lot of retirees feel a loss that they never expected. And that's why we encourage clients to think less about quitting work and more time about redefining what you're going to be doing in your retirement. As you said, some people volunteer at church. Some people turn a lifelong hobby into a small business. It just depends. But have a plan about what you're going to retire to, not from. Financially, that's where having a retirement income plan really matters, doesn't it, Jake?
Absolutely. And we need to make sure your essential expenses are covered through reliable retirement income. And then any work you choose to do becomes optional, whether you want to volunteer or whether you want to, one of the things I say, go work at Bass Pro and do something that you enjoy doing, not necessarily because you need the money, you get paid for it too, but probably not what you were making it a career or something like that. But it's a different mindset than feeling forced to keep working because you're worried about running out of money.
Questions 2 and 3, Jake, who and where, they're sort of connected a little bit. Certainly we want to decide who we want to spend time with, but also where we want to retire to. Are you finding that most people here in the last bastion of sanity, at least that you deal with, retire here and they stay close to home, or do they move or relocate? What is the most common thing that people do in your estimation?
So I have very few people that have lived here that move away. I'd say probably less than 5%. However, I do have a lot of people that move here from wherever they were at before, like California or wherever, they sell their lean-to shanty
for
in
$1 million
Southern California and come out here and buy a nice piece of property and a nice house. I have quite a bit of that. And by the way, I'm not saying that's a bad thing for anybody listening. Welcome. As a friend of mine, we'll see if he's listening. His name is Lance.
Okay.
And he said, people from California are welcome here. Just don't bring your politics.
There you go.
I don't know. That may be a little too controversial, but we're just going to leave it there anyway. So as far as who and where, the who will likely dictate the where. Meaning if you have family in California or New York or Texas or wherever, you may choose to move there to spend time with them because it's going to be hard to hang out with them if they live 1,000 miles away. So that's why I think we put those two together. But who you spend your retirement with is probably the most important of all the questions, because the older I get and the more I observe other people, that's what really matters in life is who do you spend your time with? You can have the biggest house and the best setup imaginable and the best place to grill in your backyard next to your pool. But if there's nobody there with you, you're not going to care. It's going to be empty. Who you spend your time with, who you spend your life with, your retirement with, is going to be the most important thing.
Right. And when you were working, you were around coworkers, and many times, you might be around 10, 15 different people. You get to know all of those people. When you retire, you go home and there's your spouse. It's just you and the spouse. Many times that is not healthy for a retirement to have you underfoot all the time. So try to expand your social circles a little bit. There are some people who, as I said, live here in Missouri. They live here in the last bastion of sanity. They love it here, but then they go and buy a recreational vehicle, or what they call an RV. Clark, the old Christmas Vacation movie. Have you had anybody who buys an RV and are really surprised at how much it costs to own an RV and how much they depreciate?
Pretty much everybody that buys an RV, I think, is surprised by those things. Not everybody. 98% of people that do that are surprised. I think they're also surprised at how much work it can be to have an RV. And I think the idea of driving it somewhere and just pulling up and staying there is a little bit over-romanticized. The hooking up process, where you're going, having to book it in advance, and frankly, it's not cheap anymore either.
No.
And now it sounds like I'm a big anti-RV guy. I'm not. I'm just saying I think there's a lot of people that over-romanticize that in their head on how easy and great it's going to be. Now, I have people that are avid RV people, and they know what the game's about, and they live that lifestyle all the time. And that's great. I'm just saying that if you've never done RVing before and you get to retirement and you think you're going to take it up, then you might try renting one a couple times before you go buy one, just because you might find that it's more work than it's worth. It's a little bit like having a boat.
Yep.
If you have a boat and you're on it every weekend between Memorial Day and Labor Day down here at the lake, it's probably worth having the boat. If you're going to go to that boat twice a year, you should rent the boat, not buy the boat. And I'd say the same is probably true of an RV from a financial standpoint and just from an overall hassle standpoint.
RVs are expensive these days, especially the top tier ones, but everybody doesn't have to have an RV like Will Smith that's, $1.2 million or something with a 30-foot room there where you can screen movies and so forth. But, if you're thinking about buying an RV, maybe you buy a used one because RVs do depreciate a lot the moment that you drive it off the lot. And think of the logistics too. If you've got a 30, 35, 40-foot RV, where are you going to park it? And once you get to your campground and you got to run to the supermarket, you need another car in the back of that too. So you really have to experience all of those things in order to appreciate what RVing is really all about. But again, there are a lot of people who absolutely love it. My hat's off to them. Question number 4 in retirement, and this question might be the most important, Jake, is what is my purpose? Why is that such a critical piece of retirement?
Yeah, I think the purpose is all encompasses the other ones we were talking about, meaning your purpose will determine what you do and who you do it with and where you do it. And, as a Christian, purpose is easy for me, right? If you are not a Christian, then your life's purpose may be different than what mine is, right? And I think that understanding your purpose is important. If your purpose to this point has been to go to work and pay the bills, when you retire, that can be an issue because some people, when they retire, they lose their sense of purpose, and then they end up watching 14 hours a day of Netflix, and their health goes downhill. So we got to make sure that no matter what, you do have a sense of purpose, and you want to make sure you define that sense of purpose. And part of that purpose is, maybe being with family, being the babysitter for the grandkids or whatever, right? But I think everybody's purpose is a little bit different, even specifically as a Christian. I think people have different callings and things like that. But understanding your sense of purpose and making sure you have that hammered out before retiring, I think is one of the big keys to a happy retirement. Because if you retire before you've defined that sense of purpose, you may feel like a fish out of water a little bit.
Jake, if someone is listening to the program today, they're within 5 years of retirement, what is the biggest takeaway from our conversation?
Don't just ask, can I retire? Ask, what kind of retirement do I want? Where will I live? Who do I want to be near? What do I want to do every day? What's my purpose? Those questions, once those are answered, we'll build the financial plan around those questions. So when you come to see me and we sit down and we talk, I'm going to ask you quite a few of these questions that we've talked about today. And it's not because I'm trying to be nosy, but it's because I want your retirement plan to be in tune with who you are as a person. Because that's one of the biggest keys to making sure your retirement goes the way you want, is to make sure that I, as the planner, understand you so that I don't try to give you Jim Bob's retirement. I give you your retirement. And money's important, but it's there to fund your retirement, not to become your retirement.
Exactly. And I've always said on this show that money is just a tool. You use it to enrich your life and hopefully to enrich the lives of others. Retirement is a lot more than just reaching a certain dollar amount, Jake. It's about creating a life that you've worked so hard to enjoy. So if our listeners are within a few years of retirement, or maybe you're already retired, you want to make sure your financial plan matches your goals, schedule your complimentary retirement planning visit with Jake here at Floyd Financial Group. Our number, 417-889-7233. 417-889-7233. Jake and the team here can help you build a written retirement income plan designed not just to help you retire, but to help you retire with confidence, purpose, and peace of mind. Once again, that number is 417-889-7233. We're also online, of course, at FloydFinancialGroup.com. Jake, out of time for this week. I want to thank you for your time, but most importantly, as I do every week, I want to thank the greatest listeners in the world, ours, right here in the last bastion of sanity. So for Jake Floyd, I'm Jeff Shade, wishing you a great weekend. We'll talk to you again next week right here with another edition of Show Me the Money on 104.1 FM KSGF, where Springfield comes to talk.
The information provided in the preceding program is for educational purposes only and is not intended as investment advice for any individual or entity. All information contained herein is believed to be from reliable sources. However, we make no representations as to its completeness or accuracy. The opinions expressed are subject to change without notice and do not constitute financial, legal, or tax advice. Please consult your financial professional before executing any financial strategy. Financial planning is offered through Floyd Financial Group, LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor.